Erev Tov Rabotai, we're continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Sanhedrin. We're up to Perek Aleph, Mishna Gimel. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana Ranbai, Veliyahu ben Burchai Israelov, Chana ben Miriam, Sason ben Rai, and Yoshua ben Shifra, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen. And Le'avdi ben Chaim Nechaim, V'derefua Shelemav, Daniel Shalom ben Rosa, V'toch Shah Chulei Yisrael, and Dachlama Merav, Binyamin, O Tzion Chai ben Dvorah. The Mishnah begins, Simichat Zikanim Barifat Egla Bishlosha. The leaning of the elders of the Sanhedrin on their sin offering and the procedure of the Egla Rufa, the decapitated calf, is done by three judges. Diva Rabbi Shimon, these are the words of Rabbi Shimon. Now, for most animal offerings, the owner must perform the procedure of smicha, leaning. He places both his hands on top of the animal's head and leans on it with all his strength. Judges of the great Sanhedrin had to lean on the bull they brought for their par ha'elem davar shel tzibur, bull for a matter that was hidden from the community. If the great Sanhedrin mistakenly ruled that an act punishable by karet is permitted, and a majority of the nation relying on the court's decision committed that act, the Sanhedrin had to bring a bull as a chatat offering. The Mishnah teaches how many judges were required to lean on the animal, which Rabbi Shimon said was 3. Now, regarding the decapitated calf, the Torah commands that if the body of a murder victim is found in Eretz Yisrael between 2 or more towns and it is not known who killed him, judges of the great Sanhedrin must make measurements to see which town is nearest. The elders of that town take a calf that had never worked and bring it to a hard, rocky valley where they kill it by decapitating it from the back of its neck. As the Torah says in Devarim chapter 21 verses 1 through 9, the Mishnah teaches again according to Rabbi Shimon that 3 judges of the great Sanhedrin were needed to measure from the corpse to the nearby towns. The Rabbi Yehuda Omer, but Rabbi Yehuda says B'chamisha, they are done by 5 judges. The dispute between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda is based on each one's interpretation of the verses dealing with the leaning on the bull and the Egla Rufa. Two more cases that required a court of 3. Hachalitza v'me'unin b'shlosha. Chalitza and me'un are performed in a court of 3 judges. Now, if a man dies without children, it is a mitzvah for one of his brothers to marry his widow. This marriage is called yibum. In the meantime, the widow is forbidden to marry anyone else. If the brother refuses to perform yibum, he must release her from her prohibited state by performing chalitza, in which she takes off his shoe before the court, spits in his direction, and declares, "So should be done to the man who will not build his brother's house." She is then free to marry anyone besides the brothers, as the Torah teaches in Devarim chapter 25 verses 5 to 10, and our Mishnah says that this requires a court of 3 judges. Now, under Torah law, a girl who is not yet an adult can be married off only by her father. If the girl has no father, however, the sages allowed her mother or adult brothers to marry her off. Since such a marriage is only rabbinic, the sages also gave her the right to leave it while she is still a child without receiving a get, but simply through me'un, refusal. She just makes a statement that she no longer wants to be with her husband and her marriage is dissolved. Again, the Mishnah says this must be performed in a court of 3 judges. Now, in the following cases, a court of 3 determines the value of a consecrated item in order to know how much money is needed to redeem it. Neta rivai u'maser sheni shen damav yiduin b'shlosha. Neta rivai, 4th year fruit, and maser sheni, the 2nd tithe, whose value is unknown, are appraised by 3 experts. What's neta rivai, the 4th year fruit? Oh, back to the previous point that we stated regarding the 3 judges for chalitza and mi'un. In describing chalitza, the Torah states, "And she, the widow, shall approach him in the presence of the elders," which indicates that at least 2 judges are required. Since the court must usually be made up of an odd number of judges, a 3rd judge is added. Mi'un, by contrast, is only a rabbinic law. Nevertheless, it too requires 3 judges because the sages sought to have their laws resemble those of the Torah. Since chalitza needs a court of 3, the sages decreed that mi'un requires 3 as well. Back to what we were speaking about. What's neta revai? What's 4th year fruit? The fruit produced by a tree in the first 3 years after it has been planted may not be eaten or used for any purpose. This is the prohibition of orla. The fruit of the 4th year, neta revai, is subject to the same laws as maaser sheni. What's maaser sheni, the 2nd tithe? Maaser Sheni, the second tithe, is one of the portions that must be separated from produce of Eretz Yisrael. It must be eaten in Jerusalem or be redeemed for money that is used to buy food in Jerusalem and eaten there. Regarding these two, if the value is unknown, for example, the produce started to rot and has no clear market price, they are appraised by 3 experts. The appraisal of Neter Revayim Maaser Sheni is made not by 3 judges, but by 3 merchants who are expert in determining the value of such items. Ha'ekdeshot b'shlosha, and consecrated items donated to the temple treasury, must be appraised by 3 experts. Unlike Neter Revayim Maaser Sheni, it makes no difference whether the consecrated item's value is known, since all types of things can be consecrated to the temple, and the value of many of them is unknown to most people. The sages did not distinguish between different things. Instead, they decreed that any type of consecrated item must be appraised by 3 experts before it is redeemed. Ha'arachin hamitaltelin b'shlosha. If someone wants to pay arachin, fixed amounts given to the temple treasury, the erech of a person is not his actual worth, but a fixed value defined by the Torah in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 27, verses 1 through 7, which depends on age and gender. For example, a male between the ages of 20 and 60 has an erech of 50 silver shkalim. If one says that he will give his erech or the erech of a certain person, he must give the specified amount to the temple. If he wants to pay this fixed amount with movable objects instead of money, the objects are appraised by 3 experts. Since he did not say otherwise, the previous Tana implies that the 3 experts who appraise objects for arachin may be either Kohanim or non-Kohanim. However, the next Tana disagrees. Rabbi Yehuda says, Echad men Kohen, one of the 3 appraisers must be a Kohen, because the Torah in Vayikra chapter 27 verse 12 uses the word Kohen when discussing the appraisal for arachin. The first Tana continues, V'karkaot isha v'kohen, and if someone wants to pay arachin with land and not with money or movable objects, it is appraised by 9 and a kohen, 10 experts including at least 1 kohen. The difference between appraising land, which requires 10 experts including at least 1 kohen, and appraising movable property, which requires only 3, is based on verses that speak of consecrated property. The Adam kayotzer ben, and a person is appraised in the same way as land, meaning if someone donated his own market value, how much he would be worth were he sold as a slave to the temple treasury, his value is appraised by 10 experts, including at least 1 kohen. This too is learned from the Torah. Now in this case, the person did not say that he is donating his erech, rather he said that he is donating his monetary value, which is not fixed but follows market prices, the price he would fetch in the market if he were sold as a slave. And again, this too is learned from the Torah, that his value has to be appraised by 10 experts, including at least 1 kohen. That is in the Mishnah Gimel. Mishnah Daled now turns to cases that require a lower Sanhedrin, which has 23 judges. A 23-judge court is known as a lower Sanhedrin, Sanhedrin Ktana, in contrast to the great Sanhedrin, Sanhedrin Gdola, of 71 judges, which is the subject of the next Mishnah. Dinei nefashot b'srim b'shlosha. Capital cases in which a person is tried for a crime that carries a death penalty, are judged by a court of 23. The source is going to be stated in Mishnah 6. An animal that is active with a woman and an animal that is passive with a man are judged by a court of 23. Shneimar, as it says in Vayikra chapter 20 verse 16. A woman who approaches any animal for it to mate with her, you shall kill the woman and the animal. The Torah mentions the animal together with the woman to teach that they have the same law. Just as the woman requires a court of 23 because she is subject to the death penalty, so does the animal. And it states over there in verse 15, a man who lies with an animal shall be put to death, and you shall kill the animal. Here too, by mentioning the animal together with the man, the verse teaches that since the man requires a court of 23, so does the animal. And an ox that is to be stoned because it killed a person is judged by a court of 23. Shneimar, as says in Shemot chapter 21 verses 28 and 29, if an ox gores a man or woman and the victim dies, the ox shall be stoned, and also its owner shall be put to death. The Torah mentions the ox together with its owner to teach, just as the death of the owner would require a court of 23, were he to commit a sin that carries a death penalty, so does the death of the ox require a court of 23. Although the verse states, and also its owner shall be put to death, it cannot mean that the owner is executed for not preventing his ox from goring, because a person is executed only if he himself kills someone, and not if his animal does so. The verse is therefore interpreted as teaching a different law, that the ox has the same law as its owner, and that it cannot be sentenced to death except by a court of no fewer than 23 judges. Now, although the Torah specifies that an ox that killed a person is put to death, the same law applies to any kind of animal that killed a person. The Mishnah cites a three-way dispute about some serious, especially dangerous animals, as to whether a court of 23 is required to sentence them to death. If a wolf, lion, bear, leopard, hyena, or snake killed a person, their death sentence must be passed by a court of 23, just like the death sentence of an ox that killed a person. The second opinion, Rabbi Eliezer says, whoever is first to kill these animals has performed a good deed, because he prevents them from killing again. They do not need to be brought to a court and judged, but may be killed on sight by anyone. According to Rabbi Eliezer, even if the owner had tried to tame the animal, the fact that it killed the person shows that it could not have been tamed. He should have not kept it in the first place. Since he was always forbidden to keep it, he is not viewed as its legal owner, and it has the status of an ownerless animal. Anyone may therefore kill it and need not be tried. It does not have to be tried in court. Now, the dispute in the Mishnah applies only to an animal that's owned by someone. Everyone agrees that if an ownerless animal killed a person, it may be killed on sight. The third opinion, Rabbi Akiva says, mitatan be'esrim u'shlosha, their death sentence, the death sentence of all these animals, except the snake, which is harder to tame than the others, must be passed by a court of 23. Rabbi Akiva agrees with the first Tana, who stated that even if one of these animals kills a person, it still belongs to its owner and must be judged by a court. He argues, however, that the snake is different because it is naturally more dangerous than the others. Regarding a snake that killed a person, Rabbi Akiva sides with Rabbi Eliezer, who rules that whoever kills it first performs a mitzvah because he removes a deadly beast from the world. And the Rav tells Rabbi Akiva, the Halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Akiva, that who agrees with the first Tana that even if one of these animals kills a person, it still belongs to its owner and must be judged by a court of 23, except for the snake, which can be killed on sight. And that is an abotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.